So I was born in 1955, and I was a very good student. I loved school. And then my parents got divorced when I was about 6 years old. And at the time, that was actually not a very common thing. It was in 1961, and I felt like I was the only kid in the world who came from a divorced family. A lot of people didn't even know what the word divorce meant. And it kind of threw me into a depression. And I stopped liking school, and I stopped caring, and I stopped getting good grades. And when I was in junior high, I read a book that changed my life called Summerhill, which is out of print. And it was about a school in England that let students learn whatever they wanted. There were no prerequisites. And they maintained that if you did that, eventually the students would get bored of doing nothing, they would figure out what they were interested in, they would develop self-motivation, and they would figure out what they wanted to learn and wanted to be. So I was so enamored with this idea. My parents were lower middle class to middle class. We had zero extra income in our family. So I actually got a job at a Der Wiener Schnitzel. It was my first job when I was 15. And I earned minimum wage, which at the time was $1.35 an hour. And I made $80 a month. And I went to a headmaster of an alternative high school. And I said, would you accept $80 a month for tuition for me to go to your school? I really want to go to a school like this. And he agreed. And that changed my life. And I did, in that school, went to a class on women's studies. And at the time I thought feminism was really uncool, or probably in that day's nomenclature, it wasn't groovy or it wasn't bitchin'. That was what we used to say. We didn't have the word cool in our vernacular. And I read these 3 books, and they changed my life because I came from a mother and a stepmother who were both stay-home moms, and I was never really brought up to believe that I could be something other than a wife and a mom. And so this plus my alternative education gave me the belief that I could do whatever I chose to do. And that was actually something that was a huge gift that many people don't get at the young age of being in high school. So fast forward to 1982, and my boyfriend at the time brought home an Apple II Plus computer, and he was very annoyed with me that I wasn't interested. So to please him, I cracked open the manual and started to learn how to use it. And I could not believe how horrible the manual was. And I just tried and eventually figured out a few things, and then I started to like it. And he actually, about 6 months later, told me that he was a computer widow because I liked the computer so much. But I had no idea that I could be a computer trainer as a career because it really kind of didn't exist at the time. But people started to ask me, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I was just so enthusiastic about it that I shared what I learned and kind of created this career for myself as a computer consultant and a computer trainer. I stumbled into the store to buy inkjet printer for my dot matrix printer, inkjet for my dot matrix printer, and I discovered the Macintosh. And I fell in love. I couldn't afford it. I had a May Company charge card and enough credit to charge the cost of my first Macintosh, and it changed my life because at the time I was working in the film industry in animation and doing special effects, and I learned that I could do animation and a lot of things that I was doing in my real career on the computer, and it just became my passion and my hobby. And I was really lucky to be able to apply and get a job working directly with William Shatner, who was the director of Star Trek V, to create the very first computer animatic or pre-visualization of the movie. And this project that I worked on got me a lot of notoriety, and I was written up, and that kind of launched a whole other career where more people found out about me, and I was asked to write magazine articles, and I started to become a visible person in the computer industry. And in 1985, I was invited by Apple at the amazing pay of $1,000 a day. I remember, I just couldn't believe it. To go around the world and speak about the work that I did on Star Trek V, and I got to go to Bangkok and Tokyo, and it was just really this amazing trip, and this is me when I was 30. And then in 1989, I had my daughter, who is about to turn 22. This is a picture of her when she was born, and that changed my life. And I was no longer really able to work in the film industry anymore, because in the film industry, you are not allowed to have a personal life. You can't take sick days. You're working on a film. You really just have to put in whatever hours it takes. So I was invited to give a lecture at Art Center College of Design, which is in Pasadena, California. And for those of you who've never heard of it, it's kind of the Harvard of art schools. It's a very amazing college that teaches graphic design. And they loved my talk, and they invited me to become a full-time faculty member there. So my very first teaching job was at this amazing college where I taught for 6 years. And I taught interactive design, imaging, computer imaging, animation, motion graphics, courses like that. A friend showed me an early web browser in 1994. And I was just kind of thunderstruck, thinking, all my art students need to learn how to create images and put their portfolios online. And so I want to go to the bookstore and buy a book to teach them how to do this. And I went into the bookstore, and there was only one book on HTML at the time, and I realized no one has written this book, and I have to write it. And so I just took this upon myself as an assignment to learn how to publish images and movies and the graphics to the internet, and I ended up writing a book called Designing Web Graphics. It was translated into 20 or 30 languages, became a national and international bestseller, and kind of the go-to tome at the time on how to publish to the web. And so that began lynda.com. I got an email from someone who was Debbie@Debbie.com, and she had a website that had all the Debbies on the web, links to all the Debbies on the web. And there were only about 25 links. I mean, this is really early on. And so I went, and for $35, I bought lynda.com. And that became my kind of playground sandbox to teach myself web design while I was writing the book. This was my first web page, lynda.com, in 1995. And what ended up happening is the book became a bestseller. My husband and I decided that we were going to move to this little town, Ojai, California. About 9,000 people live there, with the idea that I could still write these books. And he was an illustrator at the time, and so all he needed was FedEx and a modem, and we could kind of live in a more rural environment, raise our daughter in this more idyllic place. So he had the problem with moving to Ojai was that I really missed teaching, and I was being asked to actually speak all over the country because I'd written the book that was such the best-selling book on web design, and there really weren't even web design classes yet being taught in community college or anywhere. It was very hard to get this information. So I was kind of the it person at the it time in the it industry, and so he had this idea, could we open a place for you to teach in Ojai, and people would come to you instead. But we rented a local high school over spring break that had a computer lab, and we invited people to come to our class on our website, lynda.com. The class sold out. Only 2 people came from California, and 1 person came from Vienna, Austria, to our class. And it kind of blew our minds. And then he wrote up a business plan. He said, I think we could start a school. We opened the lynda.com training center in Ojai, California in 1997. Our first year, we did $1.7 million in revenue. And quite amazing. And people came from all over the world. We had actually someone come from the Vatican. I mean, it amazed us, from MarthaStewart.com, from LL Bean. And we even had people from the porn industry, all kinds of crazy people. It was really, really amazing. And then what happened was the dot-com crash and 9/11. and no one wanted to come to Ojai, California, even though we hadn't been involved in the whole dot-com, age and era where we were trying to build our company, to flip our company, and got a lot of investor money. We've actually, to this minute, never taken any investment dollars at all. A lot of our customers had, so our whole customer base dropped out from under us. People didn't want to travel anymore. So we decided to put the videos of our courses online and start a subscription service that for $25 a month, people could subscribe to any course that we published. So this was our classroom website. These are, sorry, I can't tell what slides are coming up next, so got to backtrack a little bit here. We bought all these iMacs with our life savings. We basically invested about $20,000 and bought 10 iMacs and 10 PCs, and that's me in 1997 in the classroom. Eventually, we had such a demand for our classes that we had to hire other teachers. We brought on other teachers. This is Garrick Chow, who still works for us today. And in 2004, our company was about 11 people, and here they all are, or it might be more than that, I should have counted. But anyway, this was our whole company. And every time we would get another 1,000 members to our subscription service, we would have a cake. And the first year, we didn't even get 1,000 members. So this is fast forwarding 3 years into it, we had 7,000 members. It started to happen too fast to where we couldn't have cakes anymore for 1,000 people. And today we have 230 employees. We've hired 130 of them this year so far. We have over 1 million members, over 2,000 instructor authors, and over 60,000 video tutorials. This is what the front page of lynda.com looks like today. It's a little washed out on the screen. These are a lot of the categories. You can see we teach 3D animation, audio, business, like things like Excel and Word, design, developer. We have a documentary series. These are all the different categories.
It was really just kind of by the seat of your pants, figuring out how to do all these things, and also very important, getting feedback, which is something that's so amazing about the internet age, that if you do something and people like it, you hear about it. If you do something and people don't like it, you hear about it. And you can, if you're willing to listen and learn, you can really make a great product if you're willing to really invest in your product and care about your product, and that's what we've done. And it's grown beyond any of our wildest dreams. I mean, wildest.
Yeah.